Hello, I'm Bill Yurka, and I build foam board airplanes. People quite often ask me to build them a combat, such as this one. So I've decided to put together this video so that you can build your own. During the video, I will actually show the plans this plane is coming from. You may want to pause your computer or television so that you can study the measurements that I will be talking about during the video. I hope you enjoy it, so let's get started. The first thing we need to do is transfer our measurements from our plans to our foam board. If you will notice in the plans that the long side of the board has measurements at the bottom of the plans. We will simply mark our foam board to those measurements. 5, 10, 11, 15, 19, 20, and 25. And that was done at the bottom of the board. Next, on the other side of the board, we will repeat these measurements. 5, 10, 11, 15, 19, 20, and 25. And now all we need to do is connect the dots. Now we will work with the lines that run on the long side of the board. And we will simply do the same thing we did with these lines. Measuring from the same corner, we have 3, 5 5/8, 9, 11, 16, and 18. Repeat the measurements on the other side of the board. And we will connect those dots. And now we have our grid from which we will work with. In the plans, these will be the ailerons. Ailerons will have a gap to keep the aileron from bumping the fuselage. So we will simply draw the gap. That will also identify it when it's time to cut. In the plans, this will be the vertical stabilizer. This part right here. Likewise on the other side, our vertical stabilizer. This will be the elevator, and these vertical stabilizers will fold up. This is where the motor is going to go, so we're going to cut out this piece right here. And by making these marks when I cut, I will know that I need to cut those out. Also, to identify where you're going to cut, you can make marks like so. This will be the leading edge of the plane. So we will be scoring this whole line. So we write S on those lines so that we know that we need to score that. The ailerons will also be scored, and the elevator. And we pretty much have our main part of our plane, our fuselage and wing, drawn out in less time than it would take to print internet planes. And now we will cut out these plans. Start by scoring. There's our aileron score, our other aileron score. And here we're cutting out the bottom of the aileron. There's our vertical stabilizer. And we will score our elevator. And just like our ailerons have this little gap part right here, we also need the gap part on the elevator. Again, this keeps the elevator from bumping the rest of the tail. Once you become familiar with this, you really don't have to mark the lines. And any size gap will do. Like so. Like so. Now at any point prior to doing any gluing, we need to transfer this line to the other side of the board. I highly recommend that you do not use measurements to do that. If you do, you might measure from the wrong side of the board and your lines won't match on the opposite side. So, to make it where they do match, we simply put a little cut in that edge, a little cut in our elevator, turn the board over, and connect the two cuts on the other side of the board. And that will be a reference line that we'll use later. And now both lines are exactly in the same place. We're not going to cut out this piece right now because it weakens this area so while we're working with it. And so we'll leave that until we get ready to glue. We will now shave our ailerons and our elevator. Break your aileron connection, your score line, pull the gap out, and see there's your gap. Right there. On the other side, cut that one out. And your aileron, your elevator, cut out those two tabs. I like to, when a control surface is 2 inches or more, I always like to shave the control surface. If it is 1 inch or less, I always shave the body of the plane, unless something interferes with that. And we simply remove about a 45-degree wedge from the elevator down to the paper. And there is our elevator. Likewise, aileron shave. And test it, and it moves freely. It's always easier when you're shaving to shave paper before foam. If you were to go from the other side, you would be cutting foam before paper. That makes it difficult to shave a control surface. And there's that control surface. Now we'll prepare our leading edge. There's the leading edge of the plane right there, double layered for strength. And one of the things is we'll add a spar on the back edge of this to also increase the strength of the plane, of the wing, so it doesn't fold on flight. First thing we need to do is glue down our leading edge. Add glue to the seam, follow the edge all the way around, and glue it down. Now this next part is optional. If you wish, you can shave the leading edge to make it a little more aerodynamic. It may slip a little through the air a little easier and travel a little faster. If you wish to do that, I will demonstrate. The top edge will do the entire leading edge. And this one does not have to be right on the seam between the two layers. It's not that critical to get real close. Okay. For cosmetic purposes, we won't shave the other side from these two lines here. I'll stop it there. And because I don't want to work foam first, I will shave this line. And now if you're concerned with the cosmetics of how rough the edge is, you can just use a little sandpaper and smooth those edges out. Like so. And now we have our leading edge prepared and ready to go. Next, we will install our spar. I prefer to use 3/16 dowel rod. Lay your spar down. Mark your length. Get your spar. Checking to make sure you didn't mess up. Okay. And apply a generous bead of glue in the crease of where the 2-ply and single ply meet. Then press your spar into the glue. This spar will greatly increase the strength of the wing. Now, in case you didn't know it, this is a trick here for removing excess glue. And if you wish to make this cosmetically pretty, just lay tape across your spar. And now we will cut out the motor hole. This is where the motor will go, and this will be an open area right here. Like so. When we finish the plane, these will be bent up. These will be vertical stabilizers. So to prepare that, we will score the vertical stabilizers on this score line we drew earlier. And to demonstrate that, there's that one, and there's that one, and now you can see that this will be the top of the plane, and there's your vertical stabilizers. There's your elevator and your ailerons. We will now cut out our skids. The skids are 2 inches wide. I just happen to know that this ruler is 2 inches wide. They are also 14.5 inches long each. There's 14.5 on that one. And 14.5 there. They will also need to be beveled, which is 2 inches marked there, which will make a 45-degree cut. There's our 2 skids. Lay our plane upside down. Check our skids to make sure that they are the right length, and they are. And we will glue them following this line right here. If you need detailed instructions on any portion of this build, refer to the book $6 Planes. And we will glue it in place. Now it is advisable to press the two parts together at this point. Also try not to get glue on your vertical stabilizer. And straighten it out like so. And the reason we press it together is because that establishes a nice straight fuselage or booms. And we will repeat the procedure on the other skid. Like so. Earlier that was flimsy, and now it's nice and strong. Okay. We are now ready to cut out our fuselage, and we'll be attaching it here. The fuselage is 5.5 inches wide. We'll measure according to the plans, 1.5, 2 3/4, 4, and 5.5 inches. We will repeat these measurements at least 14 inches down from the other end. And now we will connect those lines. Connect those dots, I'm sorry. There are three lengthwise measurements. The first one is 1 inch, and then we have 8 inches and 14 inches. According to our plans, you can see that we have a beveled front on our fuselage, so we will connect these two lines. And we will be cutting out this piece right here. This is extra, this is extra. It will be shaved off. And we'll be cutting out this piece right here. We will also be installing a servo on this line right here. To prepare our servo hole, we cut our servo hole on that line right there. Handy little gizmo of defective servo. And we cut that out. Okay. Now we will cut out our fuselage. According to the plans, we will be scoring this line from here to here, and this line from there to there, and we will be cutting off this portion here. Cutting out that interior piece. Finish out your cuts. Pull that piece out. Save this piece. We will be using it later. And now, there's our fuselage. We will now glue up our fuselage by applying a bead of glue to both seams. Distribute the glue by flattening it out a little bit, not all the way, or you'll press it all out. You can strike off the excess. Lay your fuselage down, and with any two big objects, just square it up. Give her a second to set. You test it, feel it, it's not sticky, the glue has set. Take that out, and now we will attach our fuselage to our plane. And this is where that little piece comes in. The piece is exactly the right length to fit in this spot right here. This is where we'll use to attach the fuselage. It makes for easy centering of the fuselage. Also makes for a stronger plane. If you'll notice exactly the right length, the problem with this is that we can't see our reference lines on the bottom to align it. So we cut off a small portion, about 1 inch to 1/2 inch. We then put a bead of glue on the bottom of our alignment tool, and we then align it to that line that we drew earlier and let it set for a second. Now you will see why this is so handy. We simply drop a bead of glue along the sides. And slide our fuselage into position. Press everything in. And this little piece has now aligned our fuselage perfectly with our plane. And there you have pretty much a combatter. And now we will install our servos and hook up our control surfaces. We will start with the aileron servo. Slide the aileron servo into the servo hole. And glue it in place. Now using your control wire, put a Z bend in the control wire, like so. Insert it into the servo. I am positioning the servo for 90 degrees. On a second wire, install a Z bend, insert into the other side of the servo arm. And a little thing that makes this a little easier to comprehend is fold up your aileron and draw a line across the hinge. Like so. Then lay your wire at least 1 inch out from the boom and mark your wire at least 1/4 inch deeper than the mark we made at the hinge on both wires. remove one of the wires and place a perpendicular Z-bend. What I mean by perpendicular, if both Z-bends were vertical, then it would be a parallel Z-bend. Since the servo arm is horizontal, but the control horn will be vertical, we need a perpendicular Z-bend, like so. Trim off the excess. Insert your wire and repeat the process on the other wire. And now we will install our control horns. Using a clip, I will clip the vertical stabilizer and the aileron together. This will hold the aileron flush with the wing. We'll then insert the control horn, the wire into the control horn. I will use some sort of soft medium that I will put under the control horn to press my toothpick through. This can be anything. It could be more foam board, other type of foam. This is blue foam from Lowe's. Position your servo where the servo is about a 1/4 inch off of that hinge mark. Press your toothpick through, and the other hole, do the same. Pull up your horn and press 2 holes underneath the horn. Put glue on the toothpicks and the board. Turn one of the toothpicks, press it in, turn the other toothpick, press it in, and that puts glue on the entire toothpick. And now press the horn all the way down against the foam, and that will push the glue through those 2 holes we made. Remove our foam. Cut off excess toothpick. And that side is pretty much done. Remove our clip and repeat the procedure on the other side. Turn the plane over and clip off the excess toothpicks. And now we have our ailerons wired and ready to go. Now we will do our elevator. Turn your plane over. And we will be installing our servo right here. And we'll give it a little bit of a turn because our wire is going to go across and go to our elevator right there. So we put a dab of glue, press our horn into position, our servo into position. put a Z-bend in our wire. This is very similar to the way we did the ailerons. Put the wire in the horn. Mark our, in this case, our hinge is obvious. We do not need to mark it. You can see where the paper meets the foam. It's at that point we will mark the wire. So about 1 to 2 inches in, mark your wire. Remove your wire. In this case, both the servo and the control surface are on the same plane, so we will do a parallel bend. Reattach your wire to your servo. And again, we will clip our elevator to our booms. Since I can use 2, I will use 2. Slide your horn in position. Where it is just right up to that foam meets paper line. Put your glue board under. And press your toothpicks into position. Lift them up. Make 2 holes under the horn. Glue. Turn, push, and push the horn down. And now cut off the excess toothpicks. Remove our clips. Remove our blue board. Turn the plane over. And clip off the excess toothpicks there. And now we are ready to install our firewall. Firewall is pretty easy to make. You just make a T. You can use wood or foam board on one side and wood on the other, or plastic, or whatever you like to use. I found that rulers are the perfect width, size, weight, and consistency to make it easy to work with. The material is fairly soft. And then just glue the 2 pieces together with epoxy and not hot glue. Hot glue will melt if the motor gets hot. Merely lay a bead of hot glue on your plane and press your firewall into position. And I like to line up with the back of the plane right here, back of the wing, and that helps me align that so that my motor does not become askew. Then I reinforce the firewall with plenty of glue. Now, not only does the glue help secure the firewall to the plane, or the wing, but it also makes the foam board much stronger. And now that will have plenty of resistance for the motor. doing it this way. I've never had one of these rip loose. Okay. And now we will let that cool. If you get into this real heavy, this is a handy little thing to do. You put it on your light and you can move your fan around, put it wherever you want it. Helps cool the hot glue. If you want to know if your glue has set, simply wet your finger and touch the glue and you can feel if it's soft or hard. Okay, this one has set, so we will attach our motor. I have my motor and ESC already hooked up with the prop in place, and I use Velcro to attach it, and I have both pieces of Velcro already on the ESC. Prior to installing the firewall, I did pre-drill the holes for the motor. Using the screws that come with servos, place your motor into position with the wire coming off the side and attach your motor. And there we have our motor attached to our firewall. And now we will attach it to the fuselage. I like to keep my weight forward, so I will put my ESC as far forward as possible. And to leave room for battery in here, I attach it to the side of the fuselage. Now we're ready to hook up our receiver. We could just run our wire over the top because it would be hit from the side by the skids. But what we'll do here is I will cut a hole for the wire to come through. Like so. And we fish our wire through that hole. Like that. Then we take our radio. I already have my bind plug attached. Hook up our wires. Throttle. Aileron. An elevator. And we will attach it right here. Like so. To keep that wire from flopping around, we'll run a bead of glue underneath it there and underneath it here. And to prevent it from coming loose, we will strap the wire. With hot glue. And now our radio is hooked up and we are almost ready to fly. And you're probably wondering why I have not hooked up the vertical stabilizers. And that is because if the vertical stabilizers were in position, they would always be getting in the way while I'm building the plane. They'd be hitting the table, they'd be rounding off the edges or denting the edges. And this way, it's much easier to work with. So it's the last thing I actually do. And we'll do that now. Run glue along that seam. Flex the seam so that you get glue evenly distributed. Turn your plane over. And using a piece of foam board that's been squared off, just secure it like so. Hold it in place until the glue cools. Okay, we check it, and it is secure. Our glue has cooled. The glue has cooled. Repeat the process on the other vertical stabilizer. Okay, our vertical stabilizer has set. Pull out our jig. And the last thing we need to do is set our CG so that we know where to put our battery. When we drew our plans, we drew a 5 5/8 inch line. That will be our CG line. So using a toothpick, simply press the toothpick into that line on both sides of the wing. Clip off all but about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch of the toothpick. Turn the plane over and place a battery of your choice anywhere on the fuselage to the motor. I'll place it right there, and I will now lift the plane on the toothpicks. And if you will notice, it is nose heavy. We will slide the battery back a little, and now it is tail heavy. Move it forward a little more, a little more, and we are just about there. So we know the battery is going to go in this area. So we turn the plane over, and we will attach Velcro right here. But it just happened that our battery is probably going to overlap our fuselage installation tool right here. So what we're going to do is add a little piece of foam board right there. And it doesn't have to be precisely cut. A little less than 2 inches wide, 4 or so inches long, and it will simply slide in. Here's where Velcro comes in handy, and it'll simply go in right there. So we will glue it in place. Add a little glue to our board. And slide it into position. Like so. And now we will attach our Velcro in the location we think the battery should go. Attach our battery. Flip the plane over. And check our installation. We're just a smidge tail heavy. So we'll move the battery forward a little bit. And bingo, we're there. So now all we have to do is bind the receiver, adjust our control surfaces, and go fly the rascal. And there you have it. One combat. Ready to go. And now let's see if this dang thing will even fly. Whoa!
Yes, it will.